Hello, my name's Ben.
And my name's Josh.
Welcome back to FPL Graduates and welcome back to another Transfer Targets video. It's been another crazy week of FPL with chips dropping left, right, and centre. I've hit the wild card personally, so a few of these transfer targets will be in my team reveal for the next video, so be sure to keep an eye out. Without further ado, let's get into some of these transfer targets.
Yeah, a double upload Thursday. Things you love to see just when FPL drop us a new chip. Ben's using his chip. It's a chip heavy week in the FPL Graduates YouTube channel this week. We're going to kick off with a few defenders though if you are in need of some. I know a lot of managers are struggling with their back lines at the moment with Rico Lewis being suspended. A lot of injuries to those Arsenal assets. So we'll go through a few here. Starting off with Levi Colwill. I'd argue that he's probably one of the best defenders to bring in if you need long-term security of starts and just someone to be a bit reliable back there. Chelsea defensively this season are decent. Their defensive data has been solid. Only the 3 clean sheets, but overall you'd be pretty satisfied in terms of their expected goals against so far this season. Obviously Colwill doesn't really carry any attacking threat. The 0.38 XGI so far this season is nothing to shout home about. What's your thoughts on him, Ben? Is he in that wild card?
Yeah, he's got to be at 4.5 million. He's very cheap, he's very cheerful, and he's going to get you sort of a consistency, hopefully, of 6 points. Obviously, there's probably not too much chance at all of any more points in terms of bonus or attacking returns, but it's fairly consistent for 4.5 million. Chelsea are looking like a top 3 team in the league, and for 4.5 million, that's an absolute bargain for a certified starter in that Chelsea team. So, absolutely no issues at all with that. Okay, so moving on to a defender that's slightly more attacking in terms of attacking output and threat with an XGI of 1.54 is Milos Kerkez from Bournemouth at 4.6 million. He seems to present relatively decent value, especially with the fixtures coming up. We said it time and time again, Bournemouth look really good at home. They may not keep too many clean sheets, only the 2 kept so far, but you're not looking for that with Milos Kerkez. You're looking for those attacking returns, and he seems to be getting a consistency of minutes, which I think is key over this period of many game weeks in a small amount of time. But he's also getting involved in the chances and getting those attacking returns occasionally as well. So I do think is good value. Maybe not as good a value as Levi Colwill, but still one to consider.
Yeah, when you look at the data there, obviously Bournemouth statistically slightly better than Chelsea so far defensively this season, around mid-table in terms of the full league for defences, so nothing too bad. I'd say that's probably the area that you'll find these £4.5 million defenders. In general, obviously Kerkez has been on a bit of an attacking sort of rampage, unlucky not to get an assist last weekend in that where Tavernier could have obviously tapped it home from 2 yards out, I think it was. So yeah, the attacking threat is really there with him, and I think if you're looking for a more fun pick, because let's be honest, Levi Colwill is really boring, but he'll get you those sustained minutes. I think Kerkez does that as well, but offers a little bit more attacking threat. Okay, then so another defender, but a much more premium price tag is Trent Alexander-Arnold at £7 million. He's obviously come back into that Liverpool team. A lot of fantasy managers looking to get him after his 2 assists off the bench against Newcastle in the last game that Liverpool played. Obviously, they missed out last game week due to that postponement. That is also something to consider as well, because there is going to be a double game week on the horizon relatively soon. Around, I think, game week 24 is the earliest that might be rescheduled, according to Ben Crellin, who is the double game week fixture god. So yeah, I think Trent's a decent option. For me, I just don't see the attacking threat is there. I know he's obviously just come off the back of 2 assists against Newcastle, but I just don't think it's as high as what it has been in the seasons gone by. I also think he's a slight minutes risk, obviously coming back from a hamstring injury. There is going to be some form of rotation when they're playing multiple games per week. I don't think you get that with a certain other Liverpool defender. What's your thoughts on Trent, Ben?
Yeah, I think he's a decent asset, but for the price point, you're obviously sort of wanting a serious asset. And I think, give Trent probably 6 or 7 game weeks and he might be in contention for that sort of like really sort of good spot in your FPL team. But for now and for the minute, like it's one that you could probably hold off on because there is better value, in my opinion, in that Liverpool defence at the moment. I think obviously the goal threat is the key thing with Trent, and it's just not quite there at the moment. Maybe that's the system, maybe that's Trent's fitness, etc. So Yeah, I'd potentially look at him, but I'd be more sort of looking towards those better value Liverpool defensive assets. So, one of those guys that I think is slightly better value than Trent Alexander-Arnold, especially in the fact that their security of minutes is Virgil van Dijk. Obviously, the clean sheets seem to be sort of consistent for Liverpool, so you can hopefully expect some clean sheets going forward. There is that goal threat, albeit it's a little bit less than Trent Alexander-Arnold, but you're paying less money for it, so you've got to expect that. He's been involved in a few big chances as well. So I do think that in terms of attacking output and returns, Virgil van Dijk could potentially have just as much chance as someone like Trent, especially when Liverpool are facing those weaker teams. There's a big threat for Virgil van Dijk from set pieces.
Yeah, I think Virgil van Dijk is probably the best option if you're someone who just doesn't want to worry too much about a defensive pick. I think with Trent and also Joe Gomez, who we're going to speak about in a moment, there is going to be some sort of worry longer term where their minutes could become a bit of a hassle. Virgil van Dijk, if he's fit, he's going to play every single game. That's what his minutes does show there at 1,260 so far this season. So yeah, you're paying the price tag at £6.5 million is quite a lot. But when Liverpool are playing this well defensively and you've got the absolute most security of minutes, I don't see a problem with bringing him in now. And even with an eye to the future of that double game week like we mentioned, you've already got presumably Mo Salah and then Van Dijk. So to triple up on that team, it's not going to take you too much effort at all. Okay then, so as I just mentioned, Joe Gomez is the third Liverpool defender that most would be looking at right now. Obviously, he is at the cut price of 4.9 million, and that's the big draw with him. Obviously, Kanate is rumoured to be out until at the earliest January. We haven't really got a set time frame for him to come back, and that's what would worry me most if I was to be bringing him into my FPL side at the moment. I think he's fine if you're in Ben's situation, you're on a wild card, you can select that defence from fresh now. If you're in a position like mine where you've got a suspension, some really bad fixtures, maybe someone's not playing as many minutes as you hoped, I'd probably try and avoid Joe Gomez. I know Liverpool's defence has been super solid, but for me, he will become a rotation risk sooner rather than later. And I also think the next two fixtures aren't the best for Liverpool in terms of a defensive point of view. Fulham offer really decent attacking threat. Okay, it's at Anfield, but then Tottenham as well. I think those two games you're going to be relatively lucky to come out with at least a clean sheet. What's your thoughts on him, Ben? Obviously, you've got him in your team at the moment. Do you think that there's that risk there longer term?
Longer term, yes, but I think when you're on a wild card, this is the perfect defender to bring in. And in terms of sort of buying into that Liverpool defence and looking for a plan where you can facilitate sort of all of those sort of premium assets, I think Joe Gomez is the perfect one to sort of facilitate that sort of move. So yes, I do think longer term there's a slight risk there, but if you're in a strong position in terms of your FPL team at the moment and you can make luxury transfers, Joe Gomez is almost one of those transfers that I think covers the defence really well for Liverpool without having to spend too much money. So I think there's really great value to be had in Joe Gomez. Talking of really great value, we're moving on into the midfield now and talking about Enzo Fernandez, who's in a rich vein of form for Chelsea. Started the last four, got returns in pretty much all of those games as well. He seems to be playing in really good form, getting involved in opportunities left, right and centre, maybe overperforming just slightly on his expected data, but that is to be expected of a player who, hasn't been known for his attacking returns in the last sort of a season and a half since he's been here at Chelsea. So yeah, I think really decent value in terms of a midfield enabler at 5 million. I do think there's sort of options that might be more consistent, but if you are looking for someone that can facilitate those bigger players, I don't think Enzo is a bad shout at all.
Yeah, I agree. I think at the price point you can't really complain. Minutes wise, a lot of Chelsea fans seem to think that he's pretty nailed going into their Premier League fixtures. He's part of the Conference League squad, so there is a potential for him to play in those games. We're recording this on Wednesday night. Chelsea travel to Astana, which is like a 7,000 mile round trip. The temperature's like minus 17 degrees. So yeah, not an ideal away day just before your Brentford at home clash at the weekend. However, I think if you're looking for some budget enablers, say you want to get Haaland in for his nice run that's coming up, I think that this sort of player would make that move. And obviously, like I say, a lot of fans think he's nailed. My only question mark would be if Lavia or Caicedo was to get injured. I just think it moves him further back and makes him a lot more defensive than what we've seen him in recent weeks. So, yeah, it's an interesting one for me. I personally would avoid, but I can understand why a lot of managers are looking towards him. Okay, so going on to another Chelsea midfielder, it is Jadon Sancho. Obviously played super well against Spurs at the weekend. So far this season in the Premier League, he's got 2 goals and 4 assists. At 6.2 million, he could offer some decent value if you're looking to target these Chelsea fixtures. Unlike Enzo Fernandez, though, I don't see that there will be a real sustained amount of minutes. I think he will start the majority of the games going forward, but I think there is more sort of prone to rotation with him in these Premier League games. Saying that, though, I don't think there's anyone outside of Cole Palmer who probably won't get rotated. We've even seen it with Nicholas Jackson against Southampton in the previous game weeks. What's your thoughts on Sancho, Ben? Do you think it's slightly too much to pay for that rotation risk?
Yeah, I think it is a little bit too risky to sort of invest sort of 6.2 into a player that, you know, seems to be playing once every 2, maybe once every 3 game weeks, and you know, it's not sort of one that I'd, to be honest, recommend at the moment. Of course, form, you know, is an element that you got to take into account, and Enzo Fernandez has proved that, and he's played himself into the team. There's no reason to say Jadon Sancho can't, but we were in this position 4, 5, 6 game weeks ago where we were recommending Noni Madueke, and all of a sudden he gets drops for a couple of games and Jadon Sancho comes in. So I think that element of risk and rotation's always going to be there, which is why I wouldn't sort of advocate going for him in your FPL teams. Okay, so moving on to a guy who is definitely not a rotation risk at all. It's Jarrod Bowen, the talisman of West Ham. He looks to be in fantastic form at the moment, and 12 big chance involvements is really good for him. Maybe slightly overperforming in the statistics again, but he is fairly elite in terms of his finishing and his chance creation. So we anticipate that he's one of the players that buck that trend naturally. So don't take too much into account with that. There's also the potential, of course, of him playing up front on a more regular basis for West Ham, which is fantastic news for owners because he has been known to get mega hauls when playing in that position. So definitely one to keep an eye on, especially with the fixtures they got coming up. If West Ham can really improve on their form going forward, hopefully sort of last game week was a springboard for them to do so.
Yeah, I thought against Leicester and Wolves in his last 2 games, he's looked like the shining light of that team at the moment. I think he's performing relatively well. I know his data has not been fantastic compared to the amount of returns that he has, but for me, I think he generally overperforms his data 9 times out of 10. With those fixtures as well, Bournemouth away is not maybe the easiest game, but I wouldn't put it past him to score. We're also seeing Paquetá getting rested, and you know, less minutes for him. He didn't start against Wolves, which would, you'd assume, make the penalty duties as well go to Jarrod Bowen. So yeah, an even bigger and better sort of promise with him at 7.4 million. If you're looking for a direct replacement to someone like Brian Mbeumo at the moment, I think he'd be my first shout. Okay then, so the final midfielder for the video is going to be Eberechi Eze. We had him on last week's transfer targets video, and we just think he's a decent asset that you could potentially hop on a little bit early if you have some rotation pieces in your squad. Only the 3 attack and return so far this season, but we do know that Eberechi Eze did sort of points dodgers at the start of the season, that was for sure. Him and Bruno Fernandes were sort of challenged each other for that title. 6.6 million though, Ben. Do you think he sort of has some value there, and potentially, you know, Palace, obviously their fixture run does improve past Bournemouth as well. Do you think there's an option to bring him in now?
There's an option to do so, but I'd do it at a risk, because this is a luxury and a risky transfer in my opinion, just because the minutes haven't been sort of there for Eze in terms of the injury and that sort of thing. And you know, with him, you've got to be so careful because he is a little bit injury prone with that sort of thing. So post Bournemouth, I think you'll see truly whether he's going to be good value, because over these next 3 will be crucial to see if he gets those minutes. And you know, he's had a couple of early substitutions, which we know that from previous seasons, getting those full 90 minutes can be crucial for him. So yeah, one to monitor in my opinion, but don't rule him out, because at 6.6 he could present really good value post that Bournemouth game. Okay, so moving on into the strikers, and first up is another Chelsea player. We think that they're going to have a really sort of successful run over the next few weeks. They've looked really, really good, and I think Nicholas Jackson at 8.2 million presents really good value. Of course, he was benched against Southampton, but I don't anticipate going forward that that's going to be too much of an issue. He looks fairly secure in being that number 9 for Chelsea, and of course against a really easier fixture against Southampton, he did get benched, but didn't get brought on either, so there's some return there for those that got some points jam off the bench. I do think, the stats are decent for him in terms of scoring goals, maybe overperforming on sort of getting the assist, but you know what? He's involved in pretty much everything, and everything goes through him as well. So I do think he presents some really good value going forwards.
Yeah, 18 big chance involvement so far this season is absolutely massive. I think if owners did bring him in for that Southampton game, you did get unlucky. Obviously, he came off a little bit early against Spurs as well. I think minutes wise, he's probably not a 90-minute man. I think there is general rotation there. Like I said, I only think Cole Palmer's the only one who's sort of rotation proof at the moment. But if you are looking to double up on the Chelsea attack, going into this really nice long run of good green fixtures, I think that Nicholas Jackson is arguably the second or the best second option to Cole Palmer. Okay, then, so more of a budget enabler forward for you guys for this one. It's £6.5 million and it's Chris Wood, Mr. Consistent with 10 goals already so far in the Premier League this season. Obviously scored away from home at United at the weekend. XG of 6 so far this season, so there is some overperformance. And when you look at Chris Wood's data, it doesn't scream like he's going to get 10 goals in his opening, 16 games. But his XG per shot is actually really high. So Chris Wood is not really a volume shooter. He's more quality over quantity. The fixtures for me, I know they don't look great on the ticker by colour, but for me, I think there's 3 defences there that he could easily score against all of them. Brentford ship goals for fun, no matter if it be home or away, and Tottenham as well is one of the worst defences in the league in the last 5 game weeks for expected goals conceded. Villa, we all know they love conceding a goal, so yeah, for me I think he's a good option over the next 3 and for the foreseeable as well. I think Forest are sort of coming out of that bad patch of fixtures. They're now looking to turn the corner a little bit, and to be honest, Nottingham Forest are a good enough side to go toe-to-toe with some of these top 6 teams, as we've seen from the league table so far this season. So what's your thoughts on Chris Wood, Ben?
Yeah, I think he's almost become a player that's a little bit fixture-proof in terms of the returns and expecting those returns, which is really good for and unexpected, really, to come from a team like Forest. It's really good, and I think the volume of shots is the key metric to take here, because he's getting such high quality chances. He's always going to finish them, and he's always going to perform, above his XG numbers. So, yeah, to take that into account, I think he's running, probably, if you look at 6 XG and 10 goals, he's running in line with what I believe he should be at, in my opinion, just because of the quality of the XG chances are so high, and he's such a good finisher that, that's in line with what I expect with him. Of course, there's the extra bonuses of penalties, etc. with him, and at 6.5 million, I think actually, he could be on par with someone like João Pedro in terms of that potential. You've got to bear in mind as well that the ceiling is maybe not ridiculously high, but he is very, very consistent with his returns. And finally, Alexander Isak from Newcastle United. Of course, Newcastle have been a little bit hot and cold this season, but they're coming into a really good patch of fixtures, with Alexander Isak seemingly starting to get going in terms of attacking returns. Arguably should be maybe on sort of some more attacking returns than he has. He's been a little bit unlucky for owners over a couple of sort of isolated game weeks, but in general has been really good and been involved in most of the good work that Newcastle United have done, and seems to be, when he plays well, Newcastle plays well. Josh, what's your thoughts on Alexander Isak?
Yeah, obviously I own him personally, and he's been really good to own over the last 2 weeks. I think it sort of shows what sort of asset he is. He's definitely not as consistent maybe as someone like a Chris Wood that we've just mentioned, but the ceiling is way higher with Alexander Isak. We saw that against Liverpool. He has the knack to return against anyone. Brentford, he could have come away with a lot more than just the 1 goal as well. So he's in a good patch of form. For me, these Leicester and Ipswich games are great for Newcastle. They need to get some points on the board. They're in a position which isn't great for them so far this season. So Isak should lead the line in that regard. 8.6 million as well, I think is pretty cheap for someone who's offering the amount of output that he's offered so far this season, those 9 attack and returns. I just don't see any sort of issue about not going with him right now, because he's just so consistent and so good. Okay then, so that wraps up our transfer targets for this week. As I say, a double upload today. If you're enjoying the YouTube content, make sure you do smash the like button, because we really do appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And please also remember to subscribe to the FPL Graduates for more FPL content just like this. As always, I've been Ben.
I've been Josh.
And we'll see you guys
later. Have a good game week, everyone.
So you may rise, but you'll never